"Get up, Jasmine!" The words landed like a command, hard and sharp. The classroom fell silent instantly, all eyes locked on Jasmine, who sat frozen, her fingers gripping the edges of her notebook as if holding onto a lifeline. Miss Carter's stare was cold, unyielding. "Stand up and sing, now!" Jasmine's heart pounded. She swallowed a lump that seemed to block her throat. Her voice barely a whisper, she said, "I'm not feeling well." Miss Carter's jaw tightened. "Enough. This isn't about how you feel. It's about your responsibility. You owe the class your performance." Murmurs rippled across the desks, some students shifting uneasily, others watching, curious. Jasmine closed her eyes briefly, recalling the countless nights alone, practicing until her voice cracked, the trophies tucked away at home. A national singing champion, but no one here knew. "I won't sing today," she said again, firmer this time. "Excuses," Miss Carter snapped. "Not acceptable. You will sing. No exceptions." A heavy silence settled in. Jasmine's chest tightened, but beneath the weight of fear was a flicker of quiet defiance. She met Miss Carter's gaze directly. "You don't know who I am." The classroom seemed to lean in. "Enlighten us," Miss Carter replied, eyes narrowing. "I'm a national singing champion," Jasmine said. Calmly, a collective breath was held. Miss Carter's face betrayed a flicker of surprise, quickly masked. "Is that so?" she said, voice flat. "Yes, and I don't sing on command." The tension in the room thickened. "You think you're above the rules?" Miss Carter challenged. "No," Jasmine said quietly. "I know my worth." For a moment, power shifted. Miss Carter's usual certainty wavered, replaced by a cold uncertainty. Then, after a pause, she said, "Very well. No singing today." Jasmine closed her notebook slowly, a subtle nod that spoke volumes. The class exhaled. The lesson was no longer Abo. Jasmine sat back down, the weight in her chest easing just a little. The room remained thick with silence, the kind that settles when something unspoken has changed the air. Students exchanged glances, some curious, some cautious, but no one dared to break the fragile quiet. Miss Carter lingered at the front, clipboard lowered, her posture less rigid than before. There was a flicker of something behind her eyes. Perhaps irritation, maybe a trace of respect. She cleared her throat softly. "Class, let's move on." Her voice was quieter now, stripped of its earlier sharpness. Jasmine's mind raced. All these years, she'd kept her victories to herself, wary of what it might mean to be too much in a world that often demanded silence from those like her. She remembered the way teachers had dismissed her, the sideways looks when she spoke up, the times she'd been told to play down her talents. But today was different. Today she'd spoken without shouting, and somehow that had shifted the balance. Her gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the afternoon sun was fading, casting long shadows over the playground. The laughter of younger kids playing reached her ears, a distant, lighter sound compared to the heaviness in this room. Miss Carter's voice broke through her thoughts again. "Jasmine, you may pack up." The words were simple, but carried a weight that settled between them. It was a retreat, an unspoken truce. As Jasmine gathered her things, she felt eyes on her, not the usual judgment, but something softer, more curious. A few students nodded almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging a quiet victory they weren't quite sure how to name. She stood, shoulders squared, and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, she glanced back. Miss Carter met her eyes for a moment longer this time, and for the first time there was no challenge there, only a hesitant acknowledgement. The classroom door closed behind Jasmine with a soft click. Outside, the world felt a little wider, a little less confined. The battle wasn't over, not by far, but for now she had reclaimed her voice without raising it, and sometimes that was enough. But singing, it was about control and dignity. The hallway outside the classroom was almost empty, the dull hum of footsteps and distant voices fading into a quiet rhythm. Jasmine's breath came steady, but her heart still thudded beneath her ribs. Loud, urgent, each step away from that room was a step away from a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying for so long. She passed a group of students clustered by the lockers. One boy glanced at her, then lowered his gaze quickly. Another girl whispered something to a friend, their heads close together. Jasmine didn't look back. She kept walking, hands loose at her sides, mind swirling. The trophy case by the school's entrance caught her eye, polished glass reflecting the late afternoon light. Inside were plaques and ribbons, each a story of success and recognition. Yet none bore her name. "Why hide what you are?" A quiet voice spoke beside her. Jasmine turned to see Malik, a senior she respected, leaning casually against the wall. His eyes were open, kind but probing. "Because sometimes," she said softly, "being seen can make you smaller, not bigger." Malik nodded, understanding settling in his expression. "They don't know what you carry. Not yet." A pause stretched. Between them, filled only by the faint echoes of the school's daily chaos. "You did good in there," he said finally. "Standing your ground." Jasmine's lips curved in a small, tired smile. "It's only the beginning." As the sun dipped lower, casting golden streaks through the hallway, Jasmine felt a fragile thread of hope weave itself through the weariness. The fight wasn't just about singing. It was about being heard, on her own terms. And maybe, one day soon, the world would listen. The next morning, Jasmine sat alone in the empty auditorium, her fingers tracing the worn edges of a music sheet. The silence was thick, comforting even, a refuge from the chaos of the classroom. She closed her eyes and let a soft hum escape her lips, the melody tentative at first, then growing stronger, filling the space with something raw and unfiltered. Footsteps echoed behind her. Jasmine didn't turn immediately. "You're here. Early," came Malik's voice. "I needed this," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "A place where I can be just me." Malik nodded, taking a seat beside her without a word. The moment stretched, two people connected by unspoken. "Understanding you should let them hear you," Malik said finally. "Not because they demand it, but because it's your story." Jasmine swallowed. The words stirred something deep inside, a mix of fear and longing. "I'm tired of hiding," she admitted, "but I'm scared of what comes next." Malik's gaze was steady. Change always is. A faint smile flickered on Jasmine's lips. "Maybe it's time I stopped waiting for permission." As the first notes of her song filled the auditorium, soft and sure, the world outside seemed to pause. In that moment, Jasmine reclaimed not just her voice, but her story. Jasmine's song lingered in the empty auditorium, each note carrying the weight of years spent silenced. Outside, footsteps approached softly. Malik stood at the doorway, watching silently, respect clear in his eyes. When the final note faded, Jasmine opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "That was beautiful," he said simply. She nodded, feeling something inside shift, a fragile hope, a quiet strength. The days that followed brought whispered conversations and stolen glances. Jasmine noticed subtle changes, classmates offering smiles instead of avoidance, teachers nodding with a hint of newfound respect. The air around her shifted, lighter, yet charged with tension. One afternoon, Miss Carter approached quietly after class. Her voice was low, stripped of its usual edge. "Jasmine, I wanted to say I underestimated you." Jasmine met her gaze steadily. "Thank you." Miss Carter hesitated, then added, "Keep singing on your terms." Jasmine nodded, the unspoken truce settling between them like fragile glass. Outside, the world was far from perfect. But within the classroom, Within herself, Jasmine had carved a space, one defined not by others' demands, but by her own quiet dignity. And sometimes that made all the difference. Jasmine's song echoed through the empty auditorium, each note weaving a story long kept hidden, a story of strength, pain, and quiet defiance. The stillness after her last note felt like a breath held for years, then finally released. She sat there, eyes closed, savoring the moment she had claimed for herself. Outside the doorway, soft footsteps approached. Malik's familiar silhouette appeared, his presence steady and unassuming. When Jasmine opened her eyes, he offered a small, genuine smile. "That was beautiful," he said simply, his voice carrying no judgment, only respect. Jasmine nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest, a flicker of hope she hadn't dared to feel in a long time. For the first time, she realized that her voice was not just a sound, it was a force, a declaration of her existence on her own terms. The next days unfolded quietly but profoundly. The halls of the school seemed to pulse with a new energy whenever Jasmine passed. Whispers followed her like shadows, but now they were tinged with curiosity rather than dismissal. Some classmates offered tentative smiles, small gestures of solidarity that meant more than words. Teachers who once overlooked her began to nod in acknowledgement when she spoke. It was subtle, but it was there, a shift in the fabric of her world. One afternoon, as the last bell rang and students streamed out, Jasmine remained behind. Miss Carter approached, her usual authoritative demeanor softened. "Jasmine," she began, hesitating for a moment, "I want to apologize. I underestimated you." There was no anger in her tone, just a quiet admission. Jasmine met her gaze directly, the tension between them replaced by something fragile yet real. "Thank you," Jasmine said simply, her voice steady. Miss Carter gave a small nod, then added, "Keep singing, but do it your way. Not because someone tells you to, but because it's who you are." It was an offer of respect, a silent truce forged in the aftermath of conflict. Jasmine smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips that held years of resilience. Outside the classroom walls, the world remained a complicated place, full of challenges and unseen battles. But inside, within herself, she had found a space carved by quiet dignity and strength. A space where she was no longer defined by the expectations or limitations others imposed. Sometimes, she realized, the most powerful victories are those won without raising your voice, victories claimed through calm resolve and the courage to simply be. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the school windows, Jasmine packed her things with a calm she hadn't known she could hold. The road ahead was long, but for the first time she felt ready to walk it, on her own terms, with her voice finally hers to command. Jasmine's song echoed through the empty auditorium, each note weaving a story long kept hidden. A story of strength, pain, and quiet defiance. The stillness after her last note felt like a breath held for years, then finally released. She sat there, eyes closed, savoring the moment she had claimed for herself. Outside the doorway, soft footsteps approached. Malik's familiar silhouette appeared, his presence steady and unassuming. When Jasmine opened her eyes, he offered a small, genuine smile. "That was beautiful," he said simply, his voice carrying no judgment, only respect. Jasmine nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest, a flicker of hope she hadn't dared to feel in a long time. For the first time, she realized that her voice was not just a sound, it was a force, a declaration of her existence on her own terms. The next days unfolded quietly but profoundly. The halls of the school seemed to pulse with a new energy whenever Jasmine passed. Whispers followed her like shadows, but now They were tinged with curiosity rather than dismissal. Some classmates offered tentative smiles, small gestures of solidarity that meant more than words. Teachers who once overlooked her began to nod in acknowledgement when she spoke. It was subtle, but it was there, a shift in the fabric of her world. One afternoon, as the last bell rang and students streamed out, Jasmine remained behind. Miss Carter approached, her usual authoritative demeanor softened. "Jasmine," she began, hesitating for a moment, "I want to apologize. I underestimated you." There was no anger in her tone, just a quiet admission. Jasmine met her gaze directly, the tension between them replaced by something fragile yet real. "Thank you," Jasmine said simply, her voice steady. Miss Carter gave a small nod, then added, "Keep singing, but do it your way, not because someone tells you to, but because it's who you are." It was an offer of respect, a silent truce forged in the aftermath of conflict. Jasmine smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips that held years of resilience. Outside the classroom walls, the world remained a complicated place, full of challenges and unseen battles. But inside, within herself, she had found a space carved by quiet dignity and strength. A space where she was no longer defined by the expectations or limitations others imposed. Sometimes, she realized, the most powerful victories are those won without raising your voice, victories claimed through calm resolve and the courage to simply be. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the school windows, Jasmine packed her things with a calm she hadn't known she could hold. The road ahead was long, but for the first time she felt ready to walk it, on her own terms, with her voice finally hers to command. The hallways were quieter now, the bustle of the school day winding down like a slow tide. Jasmine's footsteps echoed softly against the linoleum floor as she made her way toward the exit, her bag slung over one shoulder, her mind swirling with thoughts she hadn't quite settled. Passing a group of younger students clustered near. The lockers, she caught fragments of their conversation, laughter mixed with whispered rumors. For a moment, she wondered what they said about her. The girl who refused to sing on command, the national champion no one expected. She felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she saw Malik, his eyes warm and steady. "Hey," he said simply. "How are you holding up?" Jasmine shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Better than I thought I would." He nodded thoughtfully. "You changed something, Jasmine. Not just for you, but for all of us." The weight of his words settled between them. Jasmine looked out the window, where the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. "It's not over," she said softly, "but maybe now people will listen, not just to my voice, but to who I am." Malik smiled, a quiet understanding passing between them. And that's the beginning. Together they stepped into the fading light, ready to face whatever came next, not with noise or anger, but with the quiet power of dignity reclaimed. Jasmine paused at the school's front doors, the cool evening, air brushing against her skin like a whispered promise. She inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the day settle around her, and then slowly lift. Behind her, the building stood tall and indifferent, but inside a quiet revolution had begun, a reshaping of boundaries she never thought possible. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Malik. "Proud of you. This is just the start." She smiled, fingers trembling as she typed back a simple, steady reply. "Thank you, I'm ready." As she stepped onto the sidewalk, the distant sounds of the city, honking cars, laughter, footsteps, wrapped around her. The world outside was vast and unpredictable, but for the first time in a long while, Jasmine felt anchored. Her voice, once silenced by fear and expectation, was no longer a secret. It was hers to wield, softly but powerfully. A few blocks away, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in streaks of amber and violet. The night was coming, But so was a new day, and Jasmine was ready to meet it, on her own terms, with quiet strength and an unshakable sense of self. Jasmine's footsteps slowed as she reached the corner where the streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows that danced across the pavement. The evening air was cool, but inside her a warmth spread, not from the day's victories but from something deeper, more lasting. She thought of the countless times she'd been told to stay quiet, to hide parts of herself that made others uncomfortable. Tonight, that silence was broken. A soft chime from her phone pulled her from her thoughts. Malik's message glowed softly. "Proud of you. This is just the beginning." She smiled, fingers trembling, and replied simply, "Thank you. I'm ready." As she walked toward home, the city's noises wrapped around her. Distant laughter, the hum of traffic, the murmur of lives continuing onward. For once, she didn't feel small in that crowd. She felt seen. The sky above deepened into twilight, the horizon streaked with fading light. Darkness approached, but with it came hope, the promise of a new day, a new chapter. Jasmine breathed in deeply. The road ahead would be long, filled with challenges still unknown. But now she held something no one could take away. Her voice, not shouted or forced, but claimed quietly, powerfully as her own. And that made all the difference. The halls were nearly empty now. The last bell had rung hours ago, but Jasmine stayed seated on the cold bench near the gymnasium, fingers loosely gripping her bag's strap. The silence around her was different from the classroom's tense quiet. It was softer, filled with the promise of change and the weight of what had just passed. Malik appeared beside her with 2 bottles of water, breaking the quiet without interrupting it. "You okay?" he asked, handing her one. She took it, the cold plastic grounding her. "I think so," Malik smiled faintly. "Today was big." Jasmine exhaled slowly. "I've spent so long shrinking myself, making sure I fit the expectations of others. Today, I stopped." He nodded. "That takes more courage than most realize." She swallowed hard, eyes distant. Miss Carter apologized. Malik's eyebrows lifted. "Really?" She said she underestimated me. It felt real. They sat side by side, watching the empty corridor stretch before them, shadows growing long with the setting sun. "Do you think it'll change anything?" Jasmine asked. Malik shrugged. "It's a start. Walls don't crumble in a day, but cracks can grow." A long pause filled with unspoken fears and hopes. "I'm scared," Jasmine admitted. "Not of standing up, but of what might come after." "Change always shakes the ground beneath your feet," Malik said softly. "But you're not alone." She looked at him, grateful. The next morning, Jasmine walked into the classroom and felt the eyes on her. Not the usual cold stares or dismissive glances, but something different, curiosity, respect. Whispers floated but lacked their old sharpness. Some students smiled shyly, others nodded in acknowledgement. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Miss Carter caught her gaze briefly. No scowl, no sharp reprimand, just a flicker of something harder to read, recognition. During a group discussion, Jasmine's voice was no longer ignored. When she spoke, heads turned. The teacher asked for her opinion. Later, Jasmine found herself standing by the lockers, surrounded by a few classmates who asked about her singing. "For once," she answered, not guarded but proud. One student said quietly, "You're amazing. Why didn't you tell us before?" Jasmine smiled softly. "Sometimes you have to find the right time to be heard." One afternoon after school, Jasmine found herself alone in the music room, tuning the old piano. The familiar sounds soothed her nerves. Miss Carter entered quietly. "May I sit?" she asked. Jasmine nodded, still focused on the keys. Miss Carter took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation, about you." Jasmine's heart quickened, but she remained calm. I was wrong to push you that day. I thought I was helping you fit in, but I only made you feel smaller. Jasmine met her eyes steadily. Thank you for saying that, Miss Carter continued, voice softer. You showed me the importance of listening, truly listening, and respecting strength that doesn't shout. Jasmine exhaled, relief and something like hope blooming inside her. If you ever want to perform here on your terms, I want to support you. Jasmine smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her. I'd like that. Weeks later, Jasmine stood backstage at the school auditorium. The open mic night was buzzing with nervous energy and excitement. Her heart raced, not from fear, but anticipation. She heard Malik's voice nearby. You ready? She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The announcer called her name. The spotlight hit as she stepped onto the stage. The crowd quieted, expectant. Jasmine took a deep breath and sang. Her voice soared, clear, powerful, raw with the years of struggle, hope, and strength she carried inside. The room held its breath, caught in the magic of her story told through music. When the final note faded, applause erupted like thunder. Jasmine closed her eyes, feeling the moment wash over her. Backstage, Malik grinned and gave a thumbs up. She smiled back, knowing this was only the beginning. That night, Jasmine sat at her bedroom window, city lights twinkling below like distant stars. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Malik. Keep shining. She stared out into the night, knowing the road ahead would have challenges. But now she walked it with her voice unchained and her spirit unbreakable, because sometimes the quietest victories carry the loudest echoes.